in our modern time, like postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis and like these different things have become very normal, but they're not normal. Like they're common, but they're not normal. In most cultures that have an intact postpartum um care consciousness, in Mexico, it's called the cuarentena. In India, they call it the golden window. Like in these cultures, postpartum is associated with thriving. It's associated with an opportunity to heal things in the mother line. It's a golden opportunity to actually deeply nourish and heal the female body.
Hello and welcome to Emanate. I am your host, M. Quiver, and in today's episode, we get to hear from Stephanie Soulseed. Stephanie is offering a postpartum class this Sunday, February 15th, available both in person here in the Gorge and online, and I will have that link in the show notes. So enjoy listening to all the amazing wisdom that this woman is sharing from her own lived experience. We'll just see how we spiral
Okay.
to pregnant ladies in the altered state. But today I'm sitting with Stephanie Soulseed, this incredible woman who is in our community here in the Gorge. You are a mother of 3, soon to be 4, a community leader, a school creator, and overall, just an incredible presence in so many people's lives.
Oh.
So I know you have a very full life, and I want to thank you for this time of sharing a bit of yourself and your wisdom with the listeners who are going to, I know, glean so much from what you have to share.
Oh, that's
So
very kind.
I'm curious, in this current season in your life, what is feeling most alive for you?
I am pregnant. I'm due. I think my kids put the like countdown on our calendar for the due date. So they went backwards from the due date so that every day we can just look at the calendar and know how many days until the due date. And I have to tell them, like, it's a guess. Like, it's not like we schedule it and the baby comes on that day, you know. And my older two, they're 13 and 11, so they're fine. But my 6-year-old's, I mean, I think he's a little more oblivious too to the calendar thing, but like, it's just funny. So yeah, I mean, that's very much alive for me. And then everything that I need to like put down in order to make way for a baby, to be able to receive this child and remain in balance within myself still.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started a school 5 years ago, in our 5th year, and it moved last year. And my husband was a very big part of starting the school, but he has taken a step back, and not necessarily through his own personal desires, but just for what the needs of the school and the community were. Like he took a step back, and it's been a really amazing year. It's been really nice, like not having the school was at my house up until this year. And I was telling my staff, I said, this is the least burnt out I've been in December since I started the school. And I was in my 2nd trimester of pregnancy. I was running, but in the last couple weeks, I'm feeling like I don't have the wherewithal with like the altered state that I'm in to really hold my class in the same integrity as it had been held up until this point. And we're working on a play right now, which is like another level of like, it's just not as, it's so much more structured when it's not the play season, but the play season can get like, it's just this whole other vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And then so there's that, and just, it's in bulk today.
It is.
And we're having a big candle celebration on Saturday from noon to 3. Yeah, and so there's just like there's so much going on and so much tending, and like also so much for me of letting go, and that's a little scary and a little hard. And also, like, um, a little necessary, very
Mhm.
necessary. And a friend of mine said, she was like, "The best year of my business was the year that I didn't do anything." And I was like, "Well, I'd like to get my business to that point, you know?"
Yeah.
And I think we've got a really great team over at Heartsong right now. I think it's gonna be really good, but it's also, like, it's a big growing moment.
Mhm.
So
Is this the first time you've been away since you started 5 years ago?
no, I took a week-long vacation in February last year.
But, like, a long
Oh, yeah, this
okay,
is
this is,
this is,
like, your
like, the
first
biggest, yeah,
yeah.
where I won't be teaching anything or holding any of the space at the school.
So this is a big threshold for you in many levels, because
Yeah,
that heart song is another baby.
baby. Totally. Yeah. I
So
had 2 under 2.
you had 2 under 2. I was just wondering, so you did that alongside
Well, I did that. I mean, like, speaking of not like, when we moved to the Gorge, moved up to Trout Lake, and we started up in Trout Lake, but Michael was working in Seattle for months at a time. Like, we would see him like, we wouldn't see him for 4 weeks sometimes in a row.
wow.
And so I started this school with Zadie. He wasn't even walking yet, and, he's 6 now. And we started in a teepee, and then Michael had a greenhouse on the property too. And that winter, the teepee got blown over by a 70-mile-per-hour gust of wind,
Oh my
and
goodness.
nothing broke. Nothing. Like, it was a miracle. Like, nothing broke in that teepee, and we canceled school that day. All the parents came. We picked up the whole teepee. We put it all away. Like, we got all the wood stacked, like, and then we moved into the greenhouse, and that kind of was like the beginning of the end of the it was like, a greenhouse. This is the classroom for the kindergarten. Like, all kindergarten should be in greenhouses. This is brilliant. And up in Trout Lake, it's higher elevation than
Mhm.
where we are lower in the gorge. So we didn't have the inversion layer that we get down here. So literally, it would be sunny probably 50% more of the time than it is down here through the winter. So that greenhouse stayed toasty. Like, we'd have to open the sides and open, like, in December and January, and it was amazing. It was, like, such a like, the teepee had gotten really wet and damp feeling, nothing mold or anything like that, but just, like, it just didn't feel, like, super warm, but then that greenhouse was, like, game changer, and
Mhm.
so when we moved, we built another greenhouse to put the kids in.
It's such a good idea
It's so good.
because it's for growing.
Right.
A green for the
Totally.
children to grow inside a greenhouse and
Yeah.
life to grow.
Yeah, it's very sweet. So we just moved and we built 2 more greenhouses for the kindergarten, and we have a movement greenhouse for the grades, and it's been really amazing to see, like, much how much learning can happen
Mm,
outside in, like, like, in those spaces that are just, like, covered and protected, but not necessarily fully indoor spaces, and it's been really fun to watch the middle schoolers, especially, like, the 1st and 2nd graders. We can do so much of their lesson in that space because so much is about movement and learning in their bodies and stations and, so
mhm.
we were in there with them through November, and then since we've been doing the play practice, we've been partnering up with our 3rd and 4th grade class too in the classroom, and that's been working out great as well.
What would you say has been helping you with these steps of releasing your heart song baby in this time?
Um, well, so something about Heartsong is that we've never found very much success in ever posting a job description or like a job offer into the world. In fact, like, we tried that one time and the person lasted like 2 days. And I just have had really skilled educators contact me. Like, I had somebody contact me in um November, and she was like, "I was just thinking about you, and I closed my school, my outdoor school that I've been running, and I have time. Do you need any help?" And I was like, "I need maternity leave help. That would be great." And so she was, like, all lined up, and she had started her own school, and she was perfect, and then she called me back, and she was like, "I'm so sorry, but I got a full-time job, like, at my house, and I can't, like, help anymore." And I was like, "Okay." And it's just funny how it kind of works out where it's like having her there I didn't worry about it at all. I was like, "Okay, I have my plan, so I'm not gonna do anything because I have my plan." And then it just, like, went away, and I was like, "Well, okay, that's so interesting," and I was like, "Well, I guess I'll make a job description." So I, like, made a job description, and I was like, "Well, I guess I'll just, like, give it to the parents of the school first." And we had a parent meeting scheduled for January, which I'm due in March. That's, like, cutting it pretty close for, like, the maternity leave plan. But just in January, my Savannah calls me and she's like, "Hi, we're coming over." I was like, "Okay, do you want dinner?" And she said, "Sure." She shows up and she's getting out of the car, I hear a man's voice, so I'm like, "Oh, Miguel's come too." And then it's not Miguel, it's somebody else. I've met this person before, I don't remember their name. And I was like, "Oh." So she introduces me to this man, Dennis, who's, like,
Yeah.
an amazing educator, and he grew up in a Waldorf school, and his mom's a Waldorf teacher.
It's so
And so
amazing.
he started doing our Farm and Forest Friday, and then he's gonna come in and teach main lesson to my 1st and 2nd graders.
Oh my gosh, I love Dennis. That makes so much
It's
sense.
so good.
That is so
It's so
perfect.
good. Yeah, and he came in and watched the play today, and he was like, "Wow, the kids were as bonkers today as they were on Friday, so I feel better." And I was like, "Yeah, the sap is running."
Wow.
Like, the sap is running in the trees, and the kids have a really hard time, like, after going through that, like, internal winter.
Yeah.
When that sap starts running, they're like, "I can't sit still. I can't sit at my desk. I can't sit behind the stage and not do something."
Wow.
So, like, they just get a little and then we just kinda put them back into form, and then it's good.
So that just worked out synchronistically with
Yeah.
timing. And,
Yeah.
that reminds me of having, the trust of birth. Like, you can have a plan, you have an idea of how it's going to be. And then
Mhm.
you're like, okay, wait, there's something else working
Totally.
that is so much bigger
Yeah.
that, um, that's so beautiful. What a great alignment.
Yeah, and we were able to fill the rest of the spaces with existing staff that were working, like, just a few hours here or there. So, Emma's gonna fill in my mornings and afternoons, and Taj will be there on Monday to support, and, so and then Dennis really just fits in the whole rhythm really well. He was down to come and sub in our kindergarten class, and he's just, like, really easygoing and available and,
Yeah.
like, just and then also just
Such a great presence.
knows the culture of what we have in a very innate way.
And so there's a quality. I was talking with Savannah about this. She was the first guest on this podcast, and we didn't even get to cover the Waldorf stuff because we were so in depth with the creation process. But it's all connected because what I
Yeah,
see with her and Dennis is this unbridled creativity when you're raised in Waldorf,
yeah,
which is so cool to
yeah.
see. So weaving that in, since we're already on the topic of Waldorf, of what inspired you to go with Waldorf, and then how would you say the philosophy or the principles of Waldorf are woven into birth
Oh,
and the
good.
birth continuum?
Wow. So, when I was in high school, I was, like, super clear I wanted to be a teacher. I was like, "I think I'm gonna be a teacher." And so my high school soccer coach was a 5th grade teacher, and we could do a program at my school. I, like, literally found every program at my school that I could leave campus. I was like, "What can I do and get credit and leave campus?" And so I could volunteer in his class and then get credit, and I could leave campus for an hour a day, and so I did for 2 years before, like, my junior and senior year of high school, and it was really wonderful. He's an excellent teacher. I was in a 5th grade class for 2 years, and then I got hired by parents in that class to tutor their kids. So it was, like, full on, like, class helper, tutoring kids, babysitting, like, just I'm the oldest of 5, like, all of that came very easily to me. So I went to college. I went to St. Mary's College in South Bend, Indiana. And I was on track. My freshman year, I was getting my prereqs done, on track to get my degree in education. And I went home for winter break. So I'd been there 3 months and then went home for winter break. And I went to lunch with my with my mentor. And he sat me down and he said, "Don't do it. Don't go into teaching in the public education field.
Mm.
They just passed No Child Left Behind. I'm getting my realtor's license. I can't teach. They're not letting us teach anymore. They want them to do these tests. That's not teaching. That's not learning.
Mm.
Like, do something else, anything else. Good luck." And he'd been my soccer coach since I was in 6th grade. Like, this is a man that, like, I absolutely trusted, and I really looked up to. He was a really, really excellent teacher. And that was it. I was like, okay. So I got a degree in philosophy
Wow.
and
Cool.
women's studies. And so, my women's studies, I did, my final paper was on whether or not people were innately selfish or innately, altruistic. And
Wow.
in philosophy, you're doing it through a logical proof. So you're reading other philosophers, you're bringing their information into it, like all of that. So I was reading Indigenous American philosophy because that was my mentor, my philosophy mentor, that was her specialty. She was an American philosopher and she was a part of the American Philosophy Guild. And she said, if you're going to have anything called American philosophy, it cannot stand on 2 feet if it doesn't include the voices of Indigenous people.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought she was in her 70s when I was there, and she was just such an awesome lady, just so cool. And through this paper that I wrote as my thesis, my final thesis, I just really came to think about that. And through these different philosophers I read, I was like, we're both. We're innately both. And it's kind of like that story of that man, where the grandson, he says, there's 2 wolves
Mm-hmm.
and which wolf wins, and it's the one that you feed.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was I feel like what I learned in my philosophy is we're both. We're both these things, and we get to kind of choose which one we're gonna feed. And yeah.
Wow.
And
So both selfish and altruistic.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have both of those capacities innately within ourselves.
Yeah.
And actually it's really not about being one or the other, but it's actually really about balancing both of those things. And so I graduated college, and I went and I got a job in AmeriCorps building food gardens for low-income families in their homes in Olympia, Washington. And I met my husband within 3 months of graduating college doing that work. And he was working in a high school youth program on a farm. So it was very aligned, very similar,
Mm.
directives essentially. And I will add, at college, my job, I worked for the Center for Women's Intercultural Leadership. So I did a lot of dismantling racism work in South Bend, Indiana, which I had never really been conscious about. Racism, I was conscious about it in high school in the sense I had friends that were Mexican and Black, and I was very white. Remain very white. And but I never realized the profound separation that existed in the wider world until I left and I went to the Midwest, and there was all the white people lived over here and the Black people lived over there and the Mexicans lived over there. And it was kind of like that where I lived in Arizona, but I just never noticed until I went somewhere else. And I was in a very white college setting. And I was so uncomfortable in that setting for the first time because I was used to being in this urban, very multicultural setting. And so being in that setting. So one of the things that I did in that learning was we did this big workshop, which was about empowering women.
Mm.
And the workshop, it was a big conference and it was free, but you had to pay $50 to reserve your seat. And if you showed up, you got your $50 back. And if you didn't, they kept the $50. It was called the Wellsprings of Wisdom, and it was really amazing. And through all of that work, I came to understand that food was one way, like, that we could create the beautiful community that Dr. King talked about. Like, that everybody needed to eat, and if we could just focus on feeding everybody really well and, like, in integrity with life systems and life forces, that, like, the world was gonna be okay. It was
Mm.
like, and so this is my long my long answer to the
Mhm.
question, and so that's how I ended up in the food movement. That's how I met my husband, and that's actually how I was introduced to Indigenous spiritual practices, was through being in Olympia, and there was a group called the Red Cedar Circle and a man named Roger Harris who was pouring sweat, so I started going to sweat over there. I'm getting there,
I
I
love it. I'm with you.
promise.
This is the
Yeah.
important foundation.
And so my husband had his own had his own connection to indigenous spiritual practices through his sister, who had been adopted by a man, Canucus Littlefish Durant, and he was a roadman in the Native American church and an Ojibwe elder and just a really, like, venerated, well-respected man, like, internationally. And so I was doing my thing down in Olympia, and he had his elder Ken, and so um, I started joining him for his ceremonies, and he would join me for the ones that we were doing, and eventually, um, we got married by Ken, and we were praying in this Native American church, and everybody in the church whose kids didn't go to a, like, an indigenous-run school, a tribal school, went to a Waldorf school.
Fascinating.
And so so through that, I met teachers. I met, like, because there was Waldorf teachers in the community, and, like, so I met them, and, and my sister-in-law started educating her daughter in Waldorf school, and so it just seemed like it was, like, that was just the thing to do. And Ken passed, like, shortly after he married us. I think he married us in 2009, and he passed in 2012, so, like, 3 years later. But he sat me down one day, and he said, "I want to tell you about the cycles of development in the human being." And I was like, "I want you to tell me about the cycles of development in a human being." And he starts telling me, I mean, he was such a really good kind of storyteller, and you could really, like, wow, see the images of what he was telling you as he was, like, explaining it. It was like you were watching a movie with him,
Mm.
almost, like, when
Mhm.
he was telling the stories. And so he's like, "Well, there are these 7-year cycles that all human beings go through, and the first 7-year cycle is around, like, the goodness of life, and it's really about, um, surrounding the children in love and protection in that time, and even so," he said, "there will be something that happens during that time that we would call today, the word we use today is a trauma." He said, and that trauma is going to be something that sets them out on their life's journey. It's gonna guide them as to where they're going and why they're here. And I was like, "Oh, okay." He's all, "Then the next 7 years, 14 or 7 to 14," he's like, "that is a time of a lot of growth. It's like a golden time, and there's so much growth, and you have to protect the children at this time, especially from a lot of overt sexual energy. They're not ready for it, and if they get it at this time, they can't receive their dreams correctly."
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh, okay, okay." And so then he's like, "And then the next cycle, the 15 to 21, and that cycle is really about, like, it's really about this whole swirling growth of all the energetic forces of their life are gonna come in, except for one. But all but one comes in that time, and their brains melt and their bodies grow, and the protection still has to be there for them even as much as it was when they were very little. Because the amount of growth that they're going through, they need forces around them that are holding them and venerating them so that the growth can come in, and they know who they are because what's being reflected to them from the people around them all the time. So if they're not properly protected, then they're not going to be properly reflected.
Mm.
And he's like, and then the 21 to 28, then they know who they are. And they're going to do something about it. And then it's all going to fall apart. And then they'll be adults. And I was like, okay, whoa, and it was super cool. And that was the only one he was telling me, he's like, I want to talk to you about I always wanted to start a school. And he would talk to me about this school that he always wanted to start, and he wanted it to be a tribal school. And he wanted to do this and that. And I was like, yeah, you should start a school, Ken. Like, what do we need to do? Then he passed.
Wow.
And so I had this in me from that. And I was living in Seattle. I had a baby. I was running a nonprofit that built free food gardens for low-income families in their homes and taught them how to grow food. It was called Just Garden. It was really cool. But I had no heart for it because all I wanted was children.
Mm.
And so I hired somebody. They came in and took it over, and then I stepped out, and I was like, I let it all the way go. And it broke my husband's heart because it was so close to him. But without me putting my energy into it, I just wanted these kids, So I had my first two children. They were 22 months apart, and my brain every time you have a baby, your part of your brain and fat from your butt dissolve for real, and they go into your baby so they can make the journey through the birth canal. And it's crazy. This is something I love about birth. The distance that your baby has to travel to be born is the same distance as from your head to your heart.
What?
Think about it.
That's beautiful.
Isn't that so beautiful?
That's the ultimate journey.
Yeah.
Wow.
But they need all that fat. It's a doozy. So your brain melts, right? And then you don't rebuild the fat in there till you're done nursing. You're just in an altered state. And so I was pregnant or nursing for 4 years straight. My brain was total meltdown.
Wow.
And so I couldn't run a nonprofit anymore. I couldn't do any of that anymore. It just didn't function that way anymore. And it wasn't until Eliana was 6 and Felix was 4 that I was I had another baby, but then I was more prepared to do something again, essentially. So that's when I started Heartsong. But with these two children that I had, after I stopped running that nonprofit, I had to leave the house with them, living in the city. I didn't have enough space. It's not true. I had enough space in the yard for the two kids. They would have been fine. But I didn't have enough co-regulatory relationships to stay in my house. I had to go out so that I could be with other adult human beings so that I didn't lose my mind or my shit on my kids when it was me and 2 under 2. And I remember having to learn I never ever yelled at my daughter for the first year and a half of her life. But when my son got there, things shifted, and I remember having to learn how not to yell because I was all the time, oh my God. I was like
Just
by
turn into a
myself.
song.
Well, that's what I started doing. So you caught on. I just started singing, but I would sing really.
That's really genius, honestly. I'm gonna try that.
I would
Like,
just, I have a gourd, and so
because
I
you
would
need to
just
express and emote and
totally.
move the energy.
I remember one time they like came into the pantry and they took like everything out, and I like come out of the bathroom and like our whole pantry's on the couch, and I'm like, and they're like, "Mom, we made a store." And I was like, "Oh my God, I have to clean all that up, and I'm so tired, and I'm here by myself with two kids." It's like I sat down and I was like, just started singing like the prayer songs that I do. I'm really good at like ad-libbing prayer songs. So I was like blessing their store and blessing their entrepreneurial attitude. And it worked. Like it got me out of the like, I'm gonna lose my mind right now
Wow.
moment. But yeah, but I would leave a lot, and so there's this really cool park in Seattle called Seward Park, and it has old growth forest,
Mm-hmm.
and I go there every day. And one day I met this group of women that was like doing this homeschool program, had kids from like age 1 to 7, and um, I was like, I just started following them.
Like at the park, just
Literally,
following them.
because they had this whole thing they were doing, and they were like singing songs at different stations, and they had like, and I was just like, I just literally, it was like, like a moth to a flame. Like it was like they were going along the same path I was going on, more or less. And I was just like, and then they went off into this like little area that like was off the path. And I was like, wait, where are you going? Come back. And one of the moms like stopped and talked to me, and she was telling me what they were doing, and she said, "Yeah, but it's a really big commitment. You have to meet weekly to do curriculum with us. And like we don't want parents that are just like following along. Like we need you to come and really be a part of building the vision together." And I was like, "Oh, great. Sign me up. Like what do I need to do?" And so I started working with them, and then they were called Seeds. They were the Seeds group. And there's a Waldorf teacher training program in Seattle, the Sound Circle. And they got wind of what we were doing, and they sent somebody who was getting their master's degree in Waldorf education to us as part of her master's degree to mentor our program.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
So
it
the
was like
whole spiral back.
super legit, like, so
Wow.
it was just like, I mean, similar, right? To like Dennis coming up, right? Totally just like, oh, here I am. And, um, and so we started, I started attending her evening classes, and then also doing these like curriculum planning things with the women. And when I came in, they were like, "Well, this isn't all rainbows and ponies. There's like a lot of um friction in this group, because we have really strong opinions." And I was like, I just love that there's friction in this group. I just think that's perfect,
Mm-hmm.
because that means that everybody feels safe to say what's real for them, and that like you guys are actually building something new. Because when you're in a group and everything's like, "Oh yeah, let's do that. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah." Like it's nice. Like that's a nice part of the energy, but the kind of friction that they had was like that growth friction
Mm-hmm.
of like, like they were a little frustrated by it by that point, but like I was, so grateful to have found them. And I was like, "No, this is like the friction of like, this is just, like the guitar strings. They need to be pulled tight in order to sing the song."
Right.
And so this friction that you guys are having, like, this is the friction of integrity.
Mm.
This is the friction you want. This is the friction you want the kids to see you work through. Because they all loved each other, and they loved the kids, and like that was abundantly clear. And the little community that they had created, and the safety and
Mm.
all of that was amazing. And they could tell. And I came in like they were 3 years into it by the time I came in, so I did come in after they'd worked through a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? But I think it was helpful for the group to have me there just reflecting like, you guys are doing amazing. Like, this is so rich. Like, this is so good,
Mm.
you know? And then when that dispersed and many of the families from that went to the local Waldorf cooperative. And so that was when I took Eliana there for a year. And Eliana loved it for the first 3 months, and then she never wanted to go without me.
Mhm.
So I ended up taking every volunteer, every parent who needed to have somebody do their hours for them. I would just like take on those hours. And so I ended up spending a lot of time at the little co-op. And I saw what it looked like with this one teacher and 20 kids and 3 parents running this co-op, which I have just want to say a Waldorf like a teacher who can run a full program with parents is a really gifted person,
Mm.
because parents have all their stuff with their kids, and she just like laid it out really clearly. It was beautiful, like a really
Oh.
Miss Teacher Violetta, just a
Mhm.
beautiful program. And I was really grateful to be in there. But we ended up just doing that for 1 year because my mom moved to Vashon Island and we went over there to spend time with her. And so there was another little outdoor Waldorf school that we found on Vashon, and it was quite little. And we just came 1 day a week. And it worked because my kids were outside so much. Like, we ran a nursery and we had a landscaping company, and we were just outside because that I felt better. Like, me being inside with my kids was not the best environment for us. Like,
Mhm.
it was, even though it took more work to get them in their gear and all of that, it was less work than being inside with them, having them take everything out of my pantry.
Mhm. You're like, "I have no more songs coming."
I'm done with these blessings.
Wow.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, like Waldorf, it really like found me,
Mhm.
right? In so many
Yeah.
ways. And then when I started this school, before I started this school, I went to the Mikhail Institute and I did their early childhood training. I never took their like full certification because I had mentors. I had Waldorf teacher mentors that had like 20 and 30 years experience, and they actually just encouraged me to get started. And they said, you'll get the certification when you need it, but
Mhm.
you are this, and so just be it. Just be it.
Mhm.
And we'll help you. Right? So I wasn't on my own. I have I have amazing mentors in Waldorf education. And so I moved to Trout Lake and I was like, okay, we'll get started. I'll have like 6 kids and it'll be good. But before I went there, I went to the Mikhail Institute and I started their early childhood program. And I then took like every kind of a la carte class I could take for their program, like any intensives, or what if I had money and time, I would take. And as I was taking them, Rudolf Steiner actually describes the development of a human being in 7-year cycles.
That's what I was just gonna ask. I was like, did that line up with your elder?
Yes,
Quite.
but, like, not only that, I mean, there would just be, like, crazy things that like, I just have to say, Rudolf Steiner was, like, very spiritual man. This is
Yeah.
a spiritual impulse, Waldorf education. It, like, takes it it's head, heart, and hands, so it's very physical, right? It's very
Mhm.
material. Heart is, like, your emotional body, and then your head is your mind, so it's taking all those into account, and that's, like, this level of it. But what's behind all of that is this deep well
Mm.
of a spiritual foundation, and that human beings are not just like autotrons or, blank slates and like I have a degree in philosophy, so I got to read a lot of like thinkers of like, well, Descartes says, I think, therefore I am. And this other guy says we're blank slates. And this other guy, and so it's like all of these like thoughts that are actually foundational to how we behave in this modern world about what human beings are. And Steiner's like, human beings are spiritual beings having a physical experience, which also very much aligns with Indigenous
Mhm.
perspectives on what it is to be a human being. And yeah, there's just like, he talks about like the lamb and the lion. So the lamb is the heart of a child and the lion is the heart of an adult. And, like, that's the heart, the heart, and then the hands are, like, you think of this, like, cow, this, like, heifer that is of the earth and in the earth and gives birth and is heavy and very earthy, and then the image for the brain is the eagle, which also very much aligns with, like, the, like, indigenous, like, buffalo, but then everybody has this, like, exaltation of the eagle as well, and, like, there's this teaching, I don't know, I shouldn't even talk about it, but, like, Schneider's like, "Yeah, well, birds are one of the most spiritual creatures on the earth, so much so that their brains, like, when they die, their brains are nourishing to the earth.
Mm.
They're so spiritual, they give this, like, spiritual nourishment to the earth just by existing. Whereas human beings, when we die, our brains are kind of like something the earth needs to process. Like, for me, coming from indigenous practices where we actually use fans for blessing people and feathers for taking care of things, I was like, "It's the same! It's the same!"
Yeah.
And then the other thing that really gets me about Waldorf education is the first Waldorf school was in a tobacco factory. It came out of a tobacco factory in Stuttgart, in Germany, and, tobacco is really important to, like, the indigenous teachings that
Mhm.
we've received, and so I'm like, it's all it's all the tobacco to me. I was like, "Yes, of course," like, that would be the birthplace of this educational impulse.
Would you say, like, if you were to think back when you were a kid, were you into education and
Oh,
children
I
or
was
like
horrible at school.
okay.
I got held back.
Or like yeah, what were you into? Like, what did you love doing when you were a kid?
Oh, goodness. Well, I had a really chaotic childhood.
Mm,
So it's actually in certain ways, like, hard to say what I was
mm,
into because there was up until I was about 13, there was always, like, some major transition going on. So my parents divorced when I was 5. My dad remarried when I was 7. We moved to another state when I was 9. They divorced when I was 10. It's just like there was just a lot of chaos, but the I had 2 younger sisters that I was, like, devoted to. Like, my sister who's just 20 months younger than me was, like, my best friend. I would do anything for her, like, she was, like, my baby, and then my other sister came, and then they were my babies with all the chaos that was going on, and so, like, I was just, like, always really vigilant, I think,
mhm.
is what's real there, and then, I mean, I remember really liking slugs. But liking snails even more, like, really liking snails and really and frogs, like, and when we lived in California, like, having such an intimate like, my sister and I would go outside and just, like, play with the slugs and the snails and the frogs, like, and be good. And the other thing is we really loved stories,
Mhm,
and so we would do Three Billy Goats Gruff. We had a little bridge in the front of our house as, like, a landscaping
mhm.
feature, and we would do Three Billy Goats Gruff for, like, weeks at a time.
Wow. And you share that in Heart Song too, the
Yeah,
story.
yeah, we do the stories, yeah, I mean, the early childhood stuff is great because, those stories, like, really feed the soul of the children.
Mhm.
They're really old stories.
Yeah.
They were verbally passed down before we ever had them in writing by the Brothers Grimm or Aesop or whomever wrote the stories, and so, like, in a certain sense, like, they're out of time,
Mhm,
they're
mhm.
timeless, and so, yeah, I still love those stories, and, I think was it Mark Twain or the other guy with white hair? Einstein, one of the 2 of them, I don't remember who, said, "If you want to raise a child who's brilliant, read them fairy tales." And so that's a really important part of Waldorf education is actually, like, fairy tales and traditional stories from around the world.
I mean, that reminds me of what you're sharing about this elder who was so good at storytelling too. This
Right,
is another thread,
right. Yeah,
importance of
well,
story.
yeah, and when you do your Waldorf teacher training, they talk about, like, that you wanna tell your stories in picture images
Mm.
so that the children can form those images in themselves, and that is what leads to the boundless creativity that you were describing in our
Mhm.
friends, is that they were taught in a way that stories were alive. Like, the
Mhm.
teachers don't read the stories from books. We read the stories the night before, 2 nights before. We write them down, and then we tell them to the children. And then if we don't remember the whole story, we actually go back to that story a number of times before we move on. So I'll have a story for a full week with my kids that we're working through, and, like, my first and second graders are gonna write a sentence about that story, or in second grade, they'll write a paragraph about this story. And then as we're with the story, like, the story expands and the story becomes more than just, like, the one-time telling of it. And it's not out of a book, it's out of your imagination because that's what's gonna grab their imagination.
Mm.
And when you tell a story to a group of children or anyone really, when you're really telling a story, you're really painting a picture.
Mhm.
And through that, they take it in, and then they live it within themselves in a different way than reading
Mhm.
necessarily provides. And
Wow.
we do reading too, of course, but yeah, it's that storytelling is what that being able to have picture images in your mind actually is also the capacity that allows you to be clairvoyant.
Mm. That makes sense
Yeah,
'cause it's
and
widening the perception.
mhm. Yeah, and if your kids are, like, only on screens or your kids are, like, they don't ha aren't outside, because when they're outside and they're interacting with the natural world under the age of 7, they're under the age of 7 outside, they're actually in a theta brainwave state. They're
Mhm.
in, like, a lucid, meditative state. And so they're gonna see I mean, they're gonna see things in a totally different way than any adult would. When they're playing with the animals, they might hear the animals speak to them. They might when they're moving the dirt around, like, the dirt might be talking to them,
Mhm.
and it's totally normal. And it's something that I see I mean, like, in my with my husband, he would, like, talk to my kids in a certain way when they were little, and I was like, "Stop doing that. Stop doing that." He's like, "What?" I'm like, "They can't process what you're saying." And then finally I was like, "They're on mushrooms!" He's like, "What?" I'm like, "They're on mushrooms. Just pretend like they're on mushrooms. They took a lot of mushrooms today. A lot. They're having a trip. Can you just talk to them like they're on mushrooms, please?" And he was like, "How long have they been on mushrooms?" I'm like, "They're not really on mushrooms." He's like, "Thank God." He's like, "But really, like, what do you mean?" I was like, "No, really, like, that's how they are all the time."
That is such a great way of describing how an adult can get at that level.
Right.
That is so brilliant, Stephanie. 'Cause right. How do you meet them in that wavelength?
Right.
Because that's so important for, like, what you were saying, this 7-year
That
cycle,
first
that
7 years.
first 7
Yeah.
years. Um, well, and this makes me think about birth and how important to stay in the altered state.
Yeah.
I mean, it's already happening, right? It's the whole
Right.
continuum of conception to pregnancy to birth to postpartum. And so I guess that is what I was wondering about this thread of what Steiner was showing, this indigenous wisdom of these cycles of being with these waves, these wavelengths
Yeah,
in the altered states.
totally.
So, knowing what you know about birth and postpartum, what would you say is important for people to know in that continuum as well
Oh,
with the
goodness.
altered states?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, like, in this time, like, there's a lot of thinking and willing. There's, like, a lot of, like, "Okay, I think this, I'm gonna do this. I think
Mm,
this, I'm gonna do this. I think this, I'm gonna do this." And, like, dropping into, like, the heart space
mhm,
and, like, really coming into the feeling, like, feeling into it and being able to intuit
mhm,
and being able to speak to your feelings as they arise, like, is, I think, essential, and I think that when you talk about the birth continuum specifically, like, birth itself, and it's, like, one of the feelings that arises that it's, like, really important to be able to talk to is fear, and especially, like, your first pregnancy or your first, but, I mean, I think I was more scared my 3rd pregnancy than I was my first in certain ways. But, like, to be able to really come into, like, the full understanding of, like, all of the emotional pieces
mm,
that are occurring, you know? And so, like, right now in this pregnancy, like, there's so much joy, I'm so excited to welcome the baby in, but there's also I've got some grief happening
mm,
in this pregnancy and, just around relationships that are important to me that where people just had, like, judgments about the pregnancy itself and when we got pregnant, how, and,
mm,
and so I've been really, like, sitting with the grief that I carry around that, and not in a way that I, like, am holding on to it or anything, but just, like, being really like, just really acknowledging that it's there, and then that's part of, like, opening the doorways
mm,
to, like, the birth itself, and I think that people who practice ceremony, like, have a ceremonial practice in their lives, um, have a little more access to the doorways of birth in a certain sense, because you kind of learn how to let the ceremony itself have its own life.
mhm,
And so that's like in birth, it's like you can prepare, you can think and then do and think and do and think and do all you want. But when you get into the birth field, someone described it as like the birth fairy is going to come. And I think it's a really apt description because it's like it's no longer in the realm of thinking and doing.
mhm,
You cannot think and do your way through a birth or a postpartum time. That all of that energy is for before. Like, you think and do as much as you can before because once it gets there, you're going to go into feeling, doing, letting go, letting go, letting go. And, and like spiritually, in a certain sense, like it was described to me, like your spirit leaves your body and goes into the spirit realm and gets your child. And then you bring your child back down through the birth canal and into the world. But you have to be able to release your um to have enough strength in yourself to really let go of the physical realm in a certain sense, because the physical realm is going to be so intense when that birth is happening, to be able to make a way for the baby to come through. And then in the postpartum time, you have to rest. Which is a lot of letting go, and especially for, like, the modern American woman, I just feel like it's, like, so much letting go because, like, we do everything. Yeah, we were told we could have it all and we could do it all, and so we do. We have it all and we do it all, but then when it's time for us to give birth, we can't do it all.
mhm,
And what is having it all? You have to, like, come to terms with that, right? Like, so having it all in postpartum is about having a healthy baby and a healthy mom and a healthy partner, if that partner is involved, or healthy other adults to be supporting the mom and the baby. and it is, you are in an altered state, like, you physically physically, your your body just opened up. The ligaments in your body just opened up,
Mm.
like, your uterus, which is usually the size of about your fist or smaller, became the size of a watermelon.
Whoa.
You know, you have a dinner plate size wound inside your belly, like, inside where the placenta came off, and you have, like, all these hormones coming in to contract your body back together. These hormones make you stink. These hormones make you contract. These hormones make you irritable. These, like, all of these things. You need people around you that can hold the space for you, that know you and can reflect to you the beauty that you are,
Mm.
even though you're having this, like, very physical experience of, like, all of these things I just described. But and you have to rest, and there's, like, this little larva thing that you have to kind of tend to as well called baby. And there's, like, all the love and all the, like, good juju, but it's, like, the reality of the release of
Mm.
everything else you were doing is really profound.
Mm.
Like, you literally cannot do anything but recover
Mhm.
and nurse your baby and maybe change their diaper, but if someone else can do it, go ahead. Like, but bond with your child and your new family dynamic. Like, that's it. That's, like, the only
Mm.
job that you have at that point.
Mm.
And I think, like, it really, and all the hormones that come in, like, put you in it, like, keep you in this altered state so that you can be okay with the mundanity of what's going on. Of, like, "Oh, I'm just sleeping and wiping a butt and nursing every day. That's all I'm doing every day." And, like, how in the world could you be okay with it as, like, a modern person? Well, you need other human beings that are gonna reflect your goodness back to you. You need them around you.
Mm.
Don't leave a new mom alone with their children for the first 3 to 12 months. Like, they need, other human beings, like, physiologically around you
Mm.
to, just be okay. And so, I mean, like, there's the altered state, but there's also, like, the ceremony element of, like, even if you go into altered states in ceremonies, there's always other people there.
Mm.
And, like, I think that's, like, the most important piece of, and then that's the same thing with the children, right? Like,
Mhm.
there's always people around them. There's
Mhm.
always, like, this village of vigilance and love and support and, like, this, like, loving reflection of their goodness that are around them that make it so that as they go through that first cycle, and, I just wanna, like, name that Rochelle
Mm.
Saliga is my sister-in-law, and Innate Postpartum Care is her program, and I'm an Innate Postpartum certified person thing. I'm certified through her program, but it all also is aligned with Waldorf education and with those teachings, and she's doing a physiological baby care class really soon too, that's, like, for 0 to 3, that is amazing. Like, the way she teaches is really good. I mean, it's similar to Ken, like, you're just, like, following along and you're, like, getting all these images and all this, like, full body downloads of, like, what she's saying. She's an amazing, amazing teacher. Very good.
Mm.
Um, and so, anyway, yeah, that vigilance or protection that, Ken talked about, right, for each of these cycles of growth is, it starts at birth, and it starts in the postpartum. And part of why I became certified in her program was I had such a rough postpartum with my second child that I was like, "What happened?" And then I took her class and I was like, "Oh, that's what happened. Great." And so, and then since then, it's just been like, I just feel so deeply called to share the information because I want everybody, I mean, I'm a very local oriented girl. So, like, I want everyone in our local community to have this information
Mhm.
because ultimately, if you know this information, this innate postpartum information, which is like the physiologic reality of what the postpartum is, then you can use your thinking doing side to prep for the postpartum so that you can have those really good outcomes.
Mm. I mean, I was lucky to just attend your
Intro.
postpartum intro, and what you shared there of this lineage that you are in with Rochelle, and seeing now all the foundational aspects of ceremony and Waldorf, and it's all weaving together is really beautiful. And you have another event coming up.
Yes. I'm doing a day-long retreat where we're going to go deep into the postpartum care paradigm, and we're going to come out with like birth plans and templates for your meal trains. And I have a letter that Rochelle wrote when I was pregnant with my first child that she's actually given to all the practitioners who've been certified in her program. That's like the letter from the midwives, and it explains like what the real needs are, because so many, especially first moms, get so much junk that they never use for their baby. And it just takes all of that. Like, it just like really orients you to the fact that like this new baby's coming. This is what they need. And I used to do, when I did my intro class, I used to bring a blanket, like one of those muslin blankets. And I was like, literally, if this is all you have, you're going to be okay. Like
That's
when your
amazing.
baby's first born, like
Yeah.
if this blanket here is all you have, you're going to be fine.
It's an online option as well.
Yes.
Whoever's not in the gorge
Yes.
listening now.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
it's Sunday the 15th. And we'll have
Sunday
all
the
that
15th.
in the show notes. We can put
Okay.
all the links and
Great.
stuff.
Perfect. Two pregnant
Two
ladies.
pregnant ladies. What
And
is
a cup of
time?
tea.
It's time. It's
What
our.
is it?
Wait, what is time?
What are we talking about? I thought we were going to talk about reincarnation and karma.
If we can, we could totally. So, what, Stephanie, do you think was your last life like? No, just kidding.
Still working on it.
Okay, so I am curious because of how important postpartum care, and we were talking about the neglect of that can have such an impact
Yeah.
on the entire family system.
Yes.
And curious about you what you think some of those impacts could be if the postpartum care is not intact. And then also what, for listeners now, just simple ways for having the awareness of what anyone can do to support postpartum
A family
season.
in the
Yeah.
postpartum. Okay. I want to say that I dropped out of my first birth class. They were doing these like pain coping techniques where we held ice and then we dropped it. And I was like, I hate ice. And I'm an athlete. I was like training for a marathon when I got pregnant with my first child. And I attended ceremonies. And I was like, there is nothing that I do in my life that's really hard that I approach through pain coping techniques. Nothing, like literally nothing in my life that I've been successful at, that I focused on the hard part of it or the pain of it, and that somehow made me successful at it. And so, because Rochelle's my sister-in-law, and because I had this like very intact physiologic orientation to birth, I just like found it offensive, honestly. And so we just like after our second or third class, we dropped out. I was like, we can't. This is not gonna. I got better things to do with my time than sit here and hold ice. And I actually went to the class and I was like, hey, can we not do the ice thing? And there was a lot of people in the class who were like, no, we like the ice. We like it. I was like, okay, it's a good class for you. So I'm just like bringing that up first because like the birth is going to happen. And we are so lucky to live in a place and a time where we actually have, and like really in a place where we have very good obstetrics, very good support, very good health care to attend to the birth as it is, rather than if you need, if something doesn't go how you planned or something like that, that like generally we have pretty good birth outcomes here in the gorge and like in the Northwest in general. Um, where the baby and the mom are both born. So there's like that piece of it. Okay. But when the birth itself is over, you are entering into a relationship with another human being that is so intensely intimate, and you're entering into it from a place of in which your body is almost like incapable of functioning as it normally does. You might not have a bowel movement for 3 days. And when you do, you want it to be real easy. You already did your pushing. You might um you might actually be having like the same level of intensity of contractions for those first 3 days that that baby comes as you did while you were giving birth. The oxytocin can be so strong during that time. Also, if your birth didn't go as planned, you might be dealing with like a whole emotional something that you didn't plan for that's going to require a lot of support. And so, and even if your birth did go as planned or even better than planned, you have you're incapacitated in a very physical way. And so people put all of this energy and effort into their birth, but the birth is really just the doorway.
Mm.
On the other side of the birth is a threshold, and that is the beginning of this postpartum time. And the energy and effort that we put into planning our postpartum time, I would say, is almost more important than the energy and the effort that we put into the birth. Now, the birth is important. Like, get everything set up that you need. Make sure everything's there. I one time gave birth, and during the birth, was like, I really just want a strap I can hold on to and squat down and birth this baby. But I didn't have a strap. And I was like, oh, I just want that strap. So the next time I gave birth, I had the strap. I was really grateful. But I just remember me, they were like, God, where's this strap? I just really need this strap. But I couldn't, like, I was too far gone to like get the strap. I just made peace with the fact that I didn't have this strap, but by golly gee was going to have it next time. But so anyways, get your birth how you want it, as much as you can with what you know and like however that is. And know that that you're not the only one in charge of this birth, and that there's another being that has a karma
Mm-hmm.
in this carnation and that incarnation, and that they have a say in it too. And it will happen for them how it needs to. And there'll be harvest for you there. But when you're thinking about the postpartum, really think about it at least like as a 3-month threshold, that you're preparing a way for 3 months after the baby comes to really presence and bring into life like all of the support and care that you would need to not only take care of yourself, but also take care of whatever you're responsible for, and take care of like the needs that you're going to have that are unique during the postpartum time. Like we talked about, right? Like the wound and but then also the food. And so in our modern time, like postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis and like these different things have become very normal, but they're not normal. Like they're common, but they're not normal. In most cultures that have an intact postpartum um care consciousness, in Mexico, it's called the cuarentena. In India, they call it the golden window. Like in these cultures, postpartum is associated with thriving. It's associated with an opportunity to heal things in the mother line that like I have an auntie who was allergic to everything before she had babies, and after her 2 babies, she was allergic to nothing. Like, it's a golden opportunity to actually deeply nourish and heal, the female body, and I will say, like, after my 3rd child was born, we did a very, very intentional, very deep postpartum time, and I had friends come over, they're like, "Oh my god, you look younger. How did you do that?" Whereas, like, after my 2nd child was born and it was like, I didn't do any planning for the postpartum for him, and, like, I was a wreck, like, I was barely feeding myself. I was alone in the house at 3 weeks with, like, a baby and an infant or, like, an infant and a toddler. Like, I didn't know where my daughter was sometimes because I was nursing and I was still not back in my body. I couldn't get up
Oh my god.
to go find her. I mean, it wasn't like we had a huge house, but I just, like, didn't know what room she was in. I didn't know what she was into, and like, it was really intense, and I'm glad I'm not there anymore. I learned
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
from that, but, like, really thinking about having somebody with you
Yeah.
24 hours a day, like, that and they don't have to be right next to you, they can just be, like, in the house, like, that there's another adult that you can co-regulate with that feels good to you, like, all of that is, like, a really essential part. And in cultures where they know that the sisters and the aunties and the neighbors and the cousins, like, everyone shows up for this time,
Wow.
and they do it really easily, it's not like a big ask. It's not like you gotta, like, pull all these strings and, like, they don't have meal trains.
It just
They just
happens.
show up. They're like, "Hey," or like, "Hey," there's, like, usually, like, the point person, like, the mom or a sister or an auntie who's, like, there, and, like, anytime she's leaving, she's got, like, 6 people on speed dial. It's like, "Hey, I gotta go for an hour, come on over," and they're like, "Alright, I'll be there," and, like, that's what I want for, like, our community here. I want everybody to, like, really know this information and know it well, and so that when children are coming into life here, that the culture here is so congruent
Mm.
that,
Mhm.
like, it's just like that. You got your postpartum, like, Maven and then, like, everything.
It's such a great vision. I love that you're making ripples in this community from you offering these classes
Yeah.
and bringing in this consciousness. And it makes me wonder how the entire world would be if this time of postpartum season was honored. Like
Right.
the amount of healing, like you mentioned, lineage wise, and honoring of this time for the entire community
Yeah.
and how that ripples out. Have you seen, just with your own experience of what impacts happen when that care is not there?
Well, that's what we see, right? I mean, we actually are seeing those impacts all the time.
Yeah.
We're seeing postpartum depression and psychosis and, like, all of those things, and, like, those can happen too from, like, interruptions of the birth portal. Um, so, like, stories where, like, there's a baby crowning and then they do a C-section because the doctor needs to go home,
Mm.
and then what that does to the mom and, like, what the mom goes through after that, and yeah, it can be really devastating and then the postpartum with, like, a lack of support and, like, all of that, like, it just, like, it snowballs, right?
Mm.
Whereas if you have that experience, but you have an intact postpartum set up, then there's so much support of people coming in and, like, listening to your birth story and, like, bringing you through all the way through that rite of passage,
Mm.
and, like, holding you, like, it's not over yet, like, you're still here and your baby's here and, like, there's a lot of really beautiful supports for the postpartum time that exist now that didn't exist when our mothers were having babies.
Mhm.
Or our grandmothers for that matter. When my grandmother, she passed away a couple of years ago, but when she was alive, I had my 1st child and my 2nd child and my 3rd child. But when I told her what we were doing for the postpartum, she was appalled. I had 5 children. No one ever did any of that for me. Why do you need that? And I was like appalled that she was appalled. And then I called her back and I was crying and I was like, Grandma, I'm so sorry that no one tended to you.
Yeah.
You had 5 children and no one ever tended to you. I'm so sorry that that's what you lived through.
Mm.
And like, yeah, it changes everything.
Yeah. And in this moment, I'm curious of even the source of it being this, like we call it the modern culture, but the the separation from our nature on all these levels,
Yeah.
right?
Well, yeah. Sure you wanna go there? I'm just joking.
We don't have to.
No, I just, like,
But
I
it,
mean, well, it actually brings me back to Steiner education in a
great.
certain sense, because this is, like, from how I came to it, like, how it is for me, is that, like, the witch trials and the burnings that occurred both here in the United States, but then also in Europe that, like, many Europeans don't even know
Mhm.
about, those were, like, this great severance of
Mhm.
this traditional knowledge. And then, with the rise of industrialization and men coming into the birth rooms, like, there was another level of forgetting that occurred. And so, like, the way that after receiving the information from Ken in the way that I did, and then becoming a Waldorf educator, like, through that, like, the way that I orient to Waldorf education is that, like, through those burnings, like, all of this traditional wisdom that was held by the women actually died
Mhm.
and was lost for a really long time. And the depression that the men went through without the women there raising their children, and then what those children went, like, there's, like, this whole
Mhm.
cascading effect. But in order for that Indigenous European information to return to the people, I had to come through, like, a pretty well-off white guy. I mean, for real. That was, like, educated in the traditional sense, that, like, had these, like, foundational things that were, like, approved, essentially, by the greater, by the culture that had
Mhm.
come at that time. And so how I see Steiner education is that it's the reemergence of the indigenous teachings of European people. It's not the only one. There's, like,
Mhm.
other ones. I'm not saying that, and there's also places where it didn't die out.
Right.
But that, these teachings, this way of orienting to life
Mhm.
itself, actually provides us with very clear guidance
Mm.
as to how to human in integrity with, like, what a human is and what a human is on this earth and why we exist on this earth
Mhm.
at all
Mhm.
in the first place.
Wow.
And so, and then we talk about reincarnation and karma.
That'll be the next episode.
Just come over in the postpartum and we'll chat. It'll be, like, way
Good.
out there.
That'll be fun. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, let's see how far out we
Let's see
go.
where we can go. We're gonna talk about life between death and birth.
Like, how is that going into the spirit
Yeah, how
world and
is
then coming back
it?
in?
Yeah.
Well, before we close, just what are you looking most forward to with this fourth postpartum season for yourself?
Oh my goodness. Let me see. Well, I'm really looking forward to see how it affects how this life coming in impacts my 13, 11, and 6-year-old and my husband. Like, the the baby was conceived in a very chaotic moment. I was actually told by many people, "Do not get pregnant right now." And when I did get pregnant, they were like, "Ooh." And um but this spirit I really um feel has a timing and a knowledge of, like, is bringing something very harmonious into our family.
Mm.
And so I'm just really excited to see how my family constellation shifts in that postpartum time, and then also just, like, being, um having a time to really deeply rest and be in my home and be with my family. Like, we've been pushing really hard to
Mm.
get the school going and get everything together, and, like, every transition and every year's been, like, huge amount of labor for my family.
Mhm.
And so being able to take that step back and let the school have a life force of its own that develops without me there
Mhm.
is also really exciting. I'm also very excited about that, and to see how the spirit of all of that evolves with this one coming.
Mm.
And, like, how it feels to me is, like, the school was on our property, and then it was not, and then the baby came, like, it was, like, 1, 2, 3. It was, like, really,
Phew.
and so I'm like, yeah, I feel like the baby, like, kicked everyone out and was like, "I'm coming. Make way." And, I like that.
Mhm.
I like that kinda energy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, "Okay." And so, you know, for all the
Mhm.
people that had, I was encouraged to get an abortion. I'm not a young mom, and I was like, people had a lot to say because of where we were at during the conception, but I just kept talking to the baby
Mm.
and to, like, my own higher power
Mhm.
and to my husband, and, like, and just kept on that, and so that I'm just excited to I just
Mhm.
have so much faith in that, that, like, I'm like, "Okay, I can trust
Mm.
this timing."
Mhm.
That, like, even though it doesn't make sense to me logically, that there's something that's for the school in this timing, and there's something that's for this spirit in this timing, and there's something that's for my family in this timing, and so that's what I'm really excited for in the postpartum is, like, I'm gonna get to, really, you know, let it go,
Mm.
let everything go, and allow what life is gonna bring to come in, and I'm super excited to see what that is because I really think it's gonna be very, very good. So,
It's so beautiful.
oh,
It's so trusting the greater mystery,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Oh, I look forward to in your own timing
I know, when you're ready,
when you're
your
ready.
tiny little thing.
And then in the future, we'll both be sitting here.
I know. It's like little beings. They'll just be 3 months apart.
That's so because I really feel you on that. That the timing was not from any logic for us too. It was a surprise, and it's funny because we're the same age,
Right.
so we're considered
Geriatrics.
geriatric. Urgh, get our walkers.
I kinda really feel old actually in this pregnancy because my hips have been, like, not so happy. The
Mm,
relaxant is real.
I know, and anytime I sneeze.
It's true.
But just such a blessing from the mystery and
Yeah.
timing, and so grateful to be on this couch with the two of you,
Yeah. Us
and
too.
and just to close for this time because there's so much more that I know we'll get into in another time.
Yeah.
Uh, is just to bring in a blessing for those listening, and I'll start and then you can finish.
Okay.
If that feels good.
Okay.
May you remember that when you're with your children under 7, that they are on a trip. Like, and to then meet them on that level of play and altered state.
May you remember that you too are a child
Hmm.
and that you too have access to all of the joy that is your birthright and all of the fun and the wonder that exists all around us all the time.
Mm. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks,
so much for being here.
this is really fun.
To another time.
Yes.